had a long career. I worked for Coast Guard, ran their safety and security program for the Western region for a bit, from the Great Lakes to the Pacific to the Arctic. Was sick of public service, so set up a consulting company, beyond the border consulting here on the peninsula. Worked with a bunch of clients, and more recently with a company in Nanaimo, shipping coastal technologies that actually collaborates closely with Titan boats here. So there was a very interesting peninsula connection. Anyways, for the next few minutes, hope to set the scene for today's discussion. I'm going to touch on 4 points. 1, the call for action in a new age of compounding crisis. 2, how Canada is responding to this new geostrategic risk environment through a generational investment in defense modernization. 3, local realities here on the peninsula and South Island and Vancouver Island more broadly that will shape our success or failure in fully leveraging this new opportunity. And finally, some personal thoughts on how we can embrace the opportunity and hopefully stimulate discussion and take advantage of this generational opportunity. So, let's start with a quick question. If you're sitting in Ottawa, what do you see when you look west? Do you see a strategic gateway to the Indo-Pacific? Do you see the home of Canada's Pacific Fleet? Do you see critical ports, innovation hubs, the future of Canada's defense economy? Or do you see this as a resting place for the newlywed and the nearly dead? For a long time, we've been viewed as a cemetery or a postcard, but that's changing fast. So, global leaders now describe this as a decade of compounding crisis. You only had to hear, our Prime Minister speaking at Davos and follow the news, follow your phone, whatever your algorithms will feed you. But we've got war in Europe, we've got tensions in the Indo-Pacific, friction points in the Americas, American aspirations to take over Greenland and turn us into the 51st state. We've got strong alliances such as NORAD and NATO being brought into question. We've got gray zone activity, cyber attacks, disruptions to critical infrastructure, penetrations of submarine sea cables in the Baltic. The list goes on and on and on. We've got supply chains, trade systems, security relationships that are being rewired. And of course, we've got climate-induced disasters are stacking up. And of course, when countries feel less secure, they invest in defense. And that's what we're seeing unfold now. I would argue that we've got a tsunami of defense investment rolling in. It's the largest defense investment or modernization in generations. New ships, submarines, aircraft ground systems, new surveillance systems, strengthened cyber systems, exploitation of AI, quantum computing, new defense and civil infrastructure, hopefully, workforce renewal, and the epicenter of much of that is here at CFB Esquimalt and across Vancouver Island. If we look to the 2 Canadian patrol submarine proponents, Hanwha and ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems, or TKMS, Hanwha is looking at early submarine delivery in a couple of years, east and west coast sustainment hubs, highly skilled jobs on southern Vancouver Island, based on their strategic partnership with Babcock. ThyssenKrupp or TKMS, they've announced, in fact, recently, a couple of days ago, the launch of a Canadian defense and dual-use innovation ecosystem, linking Canada's existing innovation systems, universities, and technology clusters. TKMS is seeking sustainment partners in C-SPAN. Obviously, they have a footprint in Vancouver. They've got a footprint in Victoria. They're looking at deep integration within the existing Victoria-class support workforce that they can exploit. And of course, their openness on both parts, presumably, to local manufacturing. And here's the problem. As I see it, one of many, and maybe this will eat up more than my 10 minutes, it drives me bananas when I see premiers across the province, First Nation leaders, city leaders or regional leaders talking about teaming agreements, LOIs, MOUs they negotiated, like Hanwha and TKMS. Where is Stephen Fuhr? When is he? Why is he in Korea? Why is he in Germany? Why is he everywhere except taking a little direct flight from Kelowna down here to talk to people on the peninsula? We are doing a lousy job in creating the energy and excitement that brings these people down here. There is a complete absence of narrative creation. And you've got premiers and leaders across the country that are stepping up and talking about the exciting team agreements that they have negotiated. And what we have here, deafening silence. So we've got opportunity though. This is real money, real construction, real long-term growth, and it's going to accelerate for the next 10, 15 years. We are not at the end of the world, based on, Ottawa's perspective. We are at the gateway to the Pacific, to the world, and to opportunity. So before we all get excited about it, let's talk about some of the regional and local realities. Open air drug markets. We've taken it for granted that we're going to see graffiti, vandalism, closed businesses. We take it for granted we've got squatter villages floating in marinas on derelict and dilapidated boats. We take it for granted we've got homeless camps in city parks where kids can't play. As my wife taught at Christchurch Cathedral School, it was taken for granted that you had to watch the needles on the ground when you took the kids outside the school. Why are we taking this shit for granted? We've got businesses closing. I said squatter villages. We've got highways and road networks built for the 1950s. Why can you not drive from BC Ferries to downtown without going through a half dozen non-integrated stoplights? Random bike lines to nowhere, no regional rapid transit system, food and housing costs, growing frustration with laws and regulations that aren't enforced, and 13 dysfunctional municipalities that don't talk to each other. Truly, we live in the land of misfit toys. So here's the key point. The defensive wave is coming whether we plan for it or not. The ships are being built. The base, dockyard, ammunition facility, and fuel facilities will expand. Money's being dumped into A and B jetty. New housing being built for the military. Money is flowing. The demand for skilled workforce growing. And done right, we can completely transform this region. Building housing, schools, healthcare, stabilize communities, modernize resilient infrastructure, create career pathways, strengthen Indigenous leadership, grow innovation in the blue and green economies, and scale SMEs like you and generate long-term wealth, which is what we talked about when we sat down with Steph King and had a coffee at the Roost before Christmas. And it cannot be done by government. They operate in their silos. This has to be organic. It cannot be done by industry associations that are hunting for the next grant from Pacific Can. It has to emerge from those people that have skin in the game, and that is you, right? You can't be peeling off your 15% admin fee. You need to be putting in-kind contribution with sweat equity into this to build a narrative and drive this forward. So just wrapping up, I want to talk about, a concrete idea that I think fits rather perfectly into things. A defense and manufacturing hub or center of excellence here. We've got the Canadian Forces Maritime Experiment and Test Range up in Pop Area Whiskey Gulf near the 9-1 mid-Newts. We've got the West Coast firing areas off Tofino and Bamfield. We got the Marine Technology Center, basically a vacant building out next to iOS in Pat Bay. We got the Pat Bay acoustic range for measuring underwater radiated noise and acoustic signatures. We've got controlled airspace and water space for all kinds of test and experimentation out in Pop Area Whiskey Hotel off Sheringham and South Territory. We've got a world-class bleeding edge opportunity to create a center of excellence that should be the envy of the world for autonomous systems, sensors and payloads, quantum computing, A and I-enabled systems, environmental monitoring, defense dual use, the list goes on and on and on. And we can also pile on to things that are underway, like Borealis. So last year, the Department of Defense launched Borealis, designed to accelerate cutting edge technology and AI, quantum computing, and a bunch of other stuff. And Borealis is connected to national innovation, but also NATO innovation. We should be deeply embedded with Borealis and some of their regional hubs that they're setting up. So, completely wrapping up here, where does the Sydney Breakfast Club fit into this as a catalyst for action? We got everything we need. We've got a strategic naval and defense infrastructure, ports and marine gateways, we've got world-class training and research, we've got innovative SMEs, we've got Indigenous communities that are ready to lead economically, we've got investment-ready lands, believe it or not, some of them on the water, it might not be apparent on the peninsula, but Duke Point, South Basin, all kinds of places. There's loads of investment-ready waterfront land. Blue and green economy, innovation capacity with ABCMI, COAST, SIP, IPC, the list of acronyms goes on, Viatech. Vinny, the thing that you set up, Ray. You are connected across sectors. You're influential locally and regionally. You're able to move faster than bureaucracy because you're entrepreneurs and business people trying to get that next dollar. And hopefully, through avenues like this, we're able to convene real discussions. So working together, hopefully we can paddle in the same direction and ride this wave that's coming. Otherwise, we're going to be washed out to sea in the undertow as the wave passes over top of us. So I'm going to shut up there, and I look forward to the conversation. And I think my blood pressure is high. The angry man has come out.
Do we just start?
Yes, correct. I don't know.
Maybe before this one. Okay, well, that's going to be a hard one to follow. I don't have a lot of defense or policy thoughts here. I sort of wanted to talk about the opportunity that is available to SMBs across Canada and here on Southern Vancouver. So the opportunity that's out there, and I'm sure everybody's heard about it in the news and everything, is that we're going to increase our defense spending from 1.2% GDP to 2%, and then on to potentially 5%. And that represents, if it gets to 5, $150 billion of new spending per year. Canada has decided that should go to Canadian companies like yours. It should increase capacity. It should do a lot of things to increase Canada's competitiveness globally. And one of the ways of doing that is through this dual use. So this term is pretty new. I mean, I think it's been around, but it's been sort of battered around a lot over the last 6 months for sure. And what dual use does is if Canada's going to reach these goals, well, I don't know that they really want to put 5% GDP into military equipment per se. They want to put it into strengthening the Canadian economy. So dual use means, if there's a bridge that goes to an airbase but also goes to an Indigenous community, that's dual use. If there is a sensor that helps people, patients in hospitals, but can also help a soldier, that's dual use. So the strategy, I believe, is to allow defense spending to meet the NATO commitments, actually, contribute to all of Canada in nation building. And so if that's the case, well, how do you guys get involved, or how do we get involved, right? So there's a few different ways. I mean, you can do direct contracting, that's pretty standard. You look at Canada-wise, you can get involved. 32-month sales cycle maybe, unless something comes over right away. There's innovation grants through either EREC or through Innovation Solutions Canada, ISED, that will allow your technology advance. But the one that we want to talk about today is the Industrial Technological Benefits Program. And so what is the DIT program? So basically, when Canada buys military equipment or ships, every cent of that dollar, or every dollar of that investment must create economic benefits to Canada. So we buy, an airplane off of the United States. There's 20% Canadian content in the airplane. That company, Boeing, is required to reinvest 80% of that value back in Canada. So if it's an $8 billion purchase of an aircraft, they're required to make some sort of economic activity in Canada. They can do it in a number of ways. They can do it by setting up shop and having Canadian employees. This is the way the shipyards do a lot of it. They burn it on their own employees. They buy Canadian parts in the supply chain. They make investments in Canada. And then at some point, there's going to be leftovers. There's going to be American engines. There's going to be British components. And that's the leftovers, their deficit, or the amount that they were required to invest in Canadian companies. And so there's 4 ways that they can fulfill these. There's one-to-one direct. They can buy services off you that go on the airplane. There's one-to-one indirect. They can buy services off you that go on to Boeing 737s and indirectly offset their commitment to Canada with those investments. And then there's investment frameworks. So investment frameworks, they're able to invest in small Canadian companies, either through direct investment, through CapEx investment, through IP investments, through marketing support, a number of knowledge transfer. These investments will give them a multiplier. So they can put $1 million into a Canadian company and offset their debt to Canada by $9 million, or if they put $90 million. And so these activities allow them to invest in Canadian companies to fulfill their obligations to Canada. Now that investment is non-dilutive and non-IP bearing. So you take the money, you do the thing, you own the IP, you own the equipment, and what they get for that what they get in return is the reduction of their obligation, their debt to Canada. Now, to get involved with this is not a pile of money, it's a pile of debt to debt. So to get involved with this, you have to be not just a Canadian company that is able to take their money, you need to give them some sort of value, right? Are you going to increase their competitiveness? Are you going to, help them in some way? It's going to look good with the government of Canada? Whatever these other factors are, you need to put together the best value proposition of what you are giving to them, how your product, dual use alliance with your programs, is going to help them, is going to give them some sort of thing that they can do better, that they can offer Canada, that they can increase their business with. So once you put that value proposition together, you have to go and talk to them, align your services with their projects, and connect with them. And then once you're connected, it's just standard business development. You keep at it, you keep going over, you keep talking. I don't know if that's kind of the Cole's notes of 10 minutes, but maybe I can answer the question after.
Yeah, no.
Oh, the investment frameworks are the multipliers, right? That's the 9x for capital investment or CapEx, seven times for I believe it's IP and marketing support, and 4 times for some of the things.
Scott is a consultant that helps you obtain these things. I've done quite a bit of research into it, with the expectation that our Lower Vancouver Island takes advantage of these things. And it's complicated.
Yeah.
So we're going to get to become experts.
I can say a little bit to that. I've been doing this for 15 years. I've been in the defense industry with a company in Victoria for 15 years. Started consulting about 4 years ago. There was a lot of lip service for a long time. People have probably tried this and been turned off because Canada wasn't buying. We talked about ships for 11 years, we didn't buy ships. We talked about planes for 12 years, we didn't buy planes. That's changed. There's money flowing, these things are working. I've put 8 companies that I'm working with $40 million in non-dilutive capital over the last 4 years. So it does work. It is just slow. They're having trouble deploying the money. The primes are having trouble figuring out how to do this. It will happen. It is a good time to sort of re-engage if you've been burned before.
Good morning. My name is Ray Brown. I'm the founder of Rain House Manufacturing in Canada. We've been in business for about a quarter century. Half of that has been in the defense industry. And one thing I have to say is, Kirk gave a great 10,000-foot view about what's going on. And Scott talked about how the ITVs work. And full disclosure, Scott works with us on ITVs. The way I want to approach this today is, as many of you know, we're a small company, 25 people, and we're trying to figure out how to get involved with ITVs. And we have to some extent. So we work with most of the defense primes in Canada, and when we supply to them, we get a one-to-one ITV benefit. So what's the value in that is if you're the type of company that does things right, and that's why we'll talk about lean manufacturing after, but if you do things right, then you have a shot at becoming part of their supply chain. Because what's important to them is not parts, it's traceability and being on time our biggest customer is Babcock Canada in the defense industry. We meet with them once a week just to make sure that things are going the right way. So we maintain our one-to-one contribution because we're valuable to them. Like any company, you want to see value from your suppliers. So we're very focused on that. And really, when you think about it, what I can do as the president of a company that's in the defense industry is figure out how to bring work to Vancouver Island. So that's been a passion with myself, John Barisic. 10 years ago, we were talking about doing something with Vivian, and now it's started thanks to Trump. Really, it was, right? It was right after that announcement was made that we were going to have tariffs, and Stock Commanders, who's our co-founder, and decided that we would start Vancouver Island Manufacturing Excellence Alliance. And why is that? So I'll go back a little bit. Rainhouse has a bit of a history of being good collaborators. So we punch above our weight. We look like a 100-person company for certain things because we partner with others so that we can get bigger contracts. So what Vancouver Island needs to do is expand that. So Vimea is all about getting 50 companies together and having a matrix of capabilities where we could shop ourselves around as that one button to push. Similar to what ABCMI has done and Coast, Vimea is different in a way that it's going to be industry-led. We're not going to be looking for grants to do studies. We know what our problems are, what we need to solve, and we know how to solve it. We just have to get everybody pulling, like Kurt said, all the oars in the water at the same time, pulling in the same direction. So, what we can do, look at if you're a manufacturer, look at joining Vimea, because this is, I think, going to be the nucleus for something that Kurt talked about, is setting up some kind of center for the defense industry here. So it doesn't have to be specifically that. Vimea is about manufacturing, and Scott talked about dual use. Well, here's a perfect opportunity where we get such a cross-section. I've been doing business with companies here for 25 years. The diversity and the skills and when I think about all the possibilities, if we could just get together, I think we're going to do wonderful things. Recently, I was invited to join a group that's called the Intelligent Community Forum. And that's Sandwich, right? Sandwich wants to become the leader in becoming more efficient. And that really plays into all of this, right? If we can have more efficient municipalities that are geared to helping businesses run, and the great idea with ICF is that it's a triple helix is what it's called. So it's municipalities working with academia and industry and making sure that everybody is heard and that stuff's going to happen. So there's action items coming out of this. I'm participating for the next 5 months on a monthly meeting so we can make a plan to go forward. Not a study that's going to say what's wrong. It's like, what the hell are we going to do to actually make some change happen? So I'm very encouraged that because of groups like this, where you're all business owners and business leaders, get the word out. Make sure that we can actually get this opportunity, because it's going to pass us by. We're small. And that's really why Rainhouse collaborates with other companies, is because we understand that. We're trying to deal with, all the problems. So Babcock Canada, BAE, BMT, Lockheed Martin, all those people don't want a little company to work with. They just want one button they can push, and a whole bunch of stuff's going to happen. Look, they're working with us, and we meet with them weekly, right? We're a small company. So the only reason they're doing that is because we're doing a lot for them. we do things that we never thought we would. We do procurement for Babcock County, close to $1 million last year, just buying stuff. And that's because we deliver and we're correct all the time. We don't make mistakes to it. And it's been painful for us. Corey can attest to this, is to get things right takes a lot of effort. We have 25 people and 3 of them work in quality control. That's a big commitment where a lot of companies don't do that. Well, we have to, because we have made all the moves that we can. We have controlled goods, we have AS 9100, we have ISO 9001. We have cybersecurity happening, so that it's going to become a requirement pretty soon that you're going to have pretty high confidence and capability in keeping data safe. So a lot of investment required. The nice thing about it is we are looking to become a prime vendor, so that means we would handle a lot of the requirements that other people aren't really interested in doing. It does take a lot of effort and investment. So that's a value we add by working with companies that, let's say, do welding or painting. They don't want to get into control goods. They don't want to have all the boxes that need to be checked to make that happen. So I'll leave it at that. I encourage you and expect that you're interested in seeing something happen here in the way of capturing some of the defense spending that's going to be happening. I'm going to say it's easy. We just have to do it. We have to commit. And so I'd love to hear from anybody who's been inspired in any way to work with us.
Questions? We've got Andy.
I have a question about ITEs. So the way we're talking about it here this morning is like, okay, there's going to be a lot of inward investment. That's going to involve interaction with a bunch of different primes. They're going to necessarily have their ITEs associated with their investments here. So that's kind of like all go forward. But the last time we kind of took a vote at looking at what was actually already locked up in terms of ITE obligations in Western Canada, like conservatively in the hundreds of billions, it probably is actually well into the trillions over the decades that are actually not being spent. So do you actually have is there actually a composite strategy for figuring out how some of those obligations can actually be unlocked from the past while we're going forward? Because that actually would have a multiplier effect in and of itself if we actually figure out how to do that. Because WED is gone, now we have Pacific Can and Prairie Can, like it's time to put some pressure on them to help us actually get this work done.
That's a very good question. So online, it's publicly available, is the list of obligations and how they can be fulfilled over, for all programs that are currently in progress. They don't say, submarines or the AWACS, but so the way to look at that table is you look at it, and a lot of companies have, an obligation of, let's say, $10 billion, and they fulfill $5 billion, and there's $5 billion non-fulfilled. Well, the way that the XP program works is that they don't need to spend that money until Canada spends that money then. So if it's a shipbuilding program and they get their first $100 million for design, they have a $100 million obligation. And then if they get $1 billion for buying steel, they have a $1 billion obligation. So those obligations roll over the life of the contract based on when Canada pays them, but also they can fulfill them over the life of the contract. So the way to look at that table is to take, say that, I think it's $10 billion in Irving loans, let's say that they require to pay that over the life of the delivery of those ships. And what you have to look at in that is that they're going to earn about $500 million a year just on wages, right? So they've already figured it in how they're going to fulfill a lot of those. So I guess the outstanding debt has, in a lot of cases, been allocated. Whether or not they're going to actually fulfill it is a different story, but they in their mind have allocated. Like right now, Boeing is telling everyone there's no more ITBs on the gate, and they just won that last year. And so they believe they have, made their major investments at the beginning. They have Boeing Winnipeg is going to be one-to-one indirect for the next, 15 years. 1,500 staff there. They think they've solved the problem. And what happens is that they end up not solving it. That's where there's a lot of opportunity for little investments. Like at the end of the year, Babcock will say, "Oh, crap, we have $1 million we need to place," and you can get that money pretty quickly. But the big $13, $20 million investments, those are sort of usually only the start of a program, the first 30%. And again, like I was saying earlier, all primes are not equal. A shipyard is going to burn a lot of those on the staff. The best way to look at the ITB obligations is to figure out the prime that has no Canadian employees and no Canadian content that has the highest outstanding obligation. General Atomics, Leonardo, Boeing, before they fulfill all their obligations. The best thing to do is look at, and there's the submarine program. So the submarine program is coming up, $60 billion potentially from either of those two. One of them is not going to build subs in Canada. There is going to be a lot of indirect obligations there, but you're not going to see a cent until somebody wins. And so there's going to be a lot of talk.
So how many people are familiar with IDs or a few? How many people have attended like the ABCMI's Business Opportunity Conference or the Coast ABCMI Innovation Conference over in Vancouver? Okay, a few of you. So you've seen the ITB managers, from the prize rollout, they give you, their 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 page slide. They tell you about how, usually one slide is how to make a pitch to your ITB manager. Okay, that's really helpful, but no, it's not. What we need is actually the relationship with the ITB managers. So it's great that Alex and Jason are convening these fantastic events and bringing the ITB managers to town. What we need is something more curated here, where we can look the ITB managers in the face in some kind of facilitated workshop, ask all the dumb questions that can be asked. These guys like Scott is a bit of a translator, a universal translator, of it, and build relationships. Because without the relationship, you're not going to be able to define a value proposition that satisfies the key industrial sector that they're going to be willing to extend their debt on. They're not, even though it's a debt that they owe to Canada, I don't think for a minute they really want to part from it.
I'll take that, Mike. Let's see if this one works. Question, Mark, another question. Mike? John, it's back. Here. Or you can start talking.
More of a comment than a question. You can say about 15, 20 years ago, we were involved in when Canada was looking to acquire new helicopters to replace the sea things. We were the top that came to town, and they brought their entire team, which was all their suppliers, and was maybe held at IOS. And there were probably 20 companies, 25 companies that would have them alone. And we were allotted, I believe, 15 minutes or 20 minutes to, and we picked who we would see, and it was actually that. It was a face-to-face, sit down, talk about what we can do. They talk about what they want.
And I would argue to strengthen your bid, make friends with the local Indigenous communities. I've been the Marine Advisor to South Nation since 2019. Nobody is suggesting for a minute that it's easy to build a relationship. It's more than going out for a coffee date and exchanging business cards. It has taken me 6 years to develop a level of trust. you know, and whatnot, mutual respect, which I think we have. But it is very, very difficult. But that is the key center of gravity. And if we're all going to rise together, the 13 municipalities and the 9 nations need to rise together on the South Island.
From the perspective of early stage innovators that have a little more of a space, a lot of businesses are potentially established, but people who are at least like steering their business model around potentially a dual use application. What would you say? I'd love to hear from each of you actually. Or some maybe two top tips for shaping your value prop around potential ITPs and applying your application, applying your technology to defense and potential at the same time.
Okay, so biggest thing, I think I mentioned it before, is to be seen as a real company. So you have good systems, you have a track record, which is hard to get, right? Because if you're just trying to get in, then you have to validate yourself so that people understand that you're a serious company and worth the investment. So that's what happened with our company. We had one guy who was on a field trip looking for companies to work with Babcock, our first defense customer. And he came in and looked at what we did and asked us to do really strange things. You know, not really what we're building all the time. So we're a machine shop with electronics capability and contract manufacturing. So we're pretty diversified. But they asked us to build a replica of a room in the submarine, full size. We said, yeah, we could do that. And we had no idea how to do it. So we figured it out. And it gets used all the time because we periodically put in all the rack systems for the communications control room in a submarine. So we'll be doing it again before the submarines end their service, probably 2 more times. So that's one thing. That's how, personally, how we got it.
2 parts to this answer. First, if you just want to do some research into it, publicly available are Canada's key industrial capabilities. It's the sectors that they want to invest in, and also publicly available are defense capability investment areas. There's 150 of them. They, will align. So the IT manager is looking at a number of companies, right? In your value proposition, you want to align your service product, whatever it is, to a KIC and to a defense capability investment area. This is something that's go, okay, put this on the side and look at it. So that would be, how you sort of identify technologies, that would be, if you're just doing research, that would be the first bit. Second is to talk to them and figure out where they're going. Do some deep research with AI and look at what announcements they've made, on that. Now, that's the first part, that's how you identify the technology. So I did this, I started a defense company in 2010, software, we did training systems for the Navy, put a training system on motor vessel asterisks, all sorts of different stuff. That was the wrong way to do it. Dual use is the way to do it. Make sure the defense is the side of your desk, that it's slow. You don't need to be pushing at it all day, every day. You need to have the meetings, go to the trade shows, put the introductions out, and then have a viable company on the side. Because otherwise you're going to go through pits and peaks and defense is not, there's no sales in defense. Defense is business development. Every single contract is a new starting point. You could win a 5-year, multi-year contract with Canadian Navy, and the day that contract ends, you're writing a new RFP and competing with everyone else in Canada again. There's no loyalty, there's no sales. It is business development. And so everything is a one-off. You have to listen, build something innovative for them, and do it again and again and again.
It's going to take homework. So listening to how you date, and the 1-point PowerPoint slide where you get a business card exchanged. I say leverage the hell out of AI, produce discussion paper, white paper, help you with your homework, get them excited about it. But then, before any money moves, or you might not even have have an NDA at that point. They're going to want to see, from your perspective, what the financials look like for them. And that is going to be a lot of work, a lot of spreadsheets, going into the ITB formulas, determining what the benefit is to them. They're not going to waste their time. You're going to be wasting your time trying to answer the mail. So it's going to take a lot of homework, and keep the dating going and be persistent. So, guy I'm working with right now, he's playing the dating game in Germany. And guess what? The 2 submarine proponents, their proposals need to be in on the 2nd of March. And the government has said they're going to take till the summer. They're going to send a team to Germany, team to Korea. They're going to evaluate the proposals, and then using whatever magical criteria the government uses, and probably at the end of the day, it'll be a political decision that's made by a candidate and ultimately the prime minister. They're going to go thumbs up or thumbs down. And that's how it goes. So,
Interesting time tonight. Limited time? I'm going to try to squeeze 2 more questions. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so this is actually more of a quick comment. Suppliers need suppliers. We've been learning about what's going on, about all companies, like Ray's company, that can work with and deal with these large contracts that come down. But they also need support, right? As a community, all the businesses, lumber, electrical, food, I don't care what business you're in, it used to be a hotel business, it all matters. If we make their life easy, they have a chance to bid and get these contracts which benefits our community. So remember, don't glaze over if you're not one of these guys, because they'll need your business, or their employees will need your business. It's really important we come together as a community on this.
We've taken a bunch of this community work online by LinkedIn. I'll send those links to all of you. It's incumbent that you get involved. So far, we do have these communities, but there's not a lot of activity. I like your idea about doing some kind of thing with people in rooms. I like that. And again, build relationships.
But first of all, I applaud your passion, Kurt. I didn't know you were such a passionate guy. Guys, I applaud your desire to come together as industry to respond to this tsunami. It's the right approach. On the east coast of Canada, we're not good at that. We go to government and look for subsidies to move this conversation forward. And it's slow, and it's clunky, but it's working. I will tell you that it's working. And I know why it's working on the east coast of Canada, and that is because we are telling our story. The companies are standing up and they're saying, here's what we do. Here's what we can offer. My question to you, are you doing that? Because this is really, at the end of the day, a hearts and minds campaign. We have to get into the heads of the primes, get into the heads of government to understand what you all offer. And I would also say, this is not just Canada. Canada is just a customer here. NATO is spending, and we need to be looking at the bigger picture of the NATO spend as well. So my question to you is, with all of that passion that you just drummed up, are you telling your story? What is the plan for that?
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
I tried to start the story last June with a discussion paper I put together and shared within my brain trust. There was some level of interest, great deal of interest from this gentleman, Dr. Castle, and a few others, but they're part of associations or whatever. They're not entrepreneurs per se. They're not necessarily on the hunt to create wealth. They're on the hunt for grants to keep their organizations on life support. That's what they're there to do. So when we sat down in December, we said we need to do something about it. We're 2 months on. Sorry about that. We wish we could have done this the day after we met. But we've got to create momentum somehow, and you're spot on the money. Whether it's these little webinars and YouTube videos and whatnot. But I think even some kind of curated event, we don't have to spend a pile of money to do it somewhere. We can do it in the open air as the weather gets warmer. But let's convene and build a narrative, you know? It shouldn't be up to just C-SPAN to have a narrative, or Babcock to have a narrative, or Coda, or Magellan, or a few of these, you know, big companies that have a narrative. Ray, you're terrific at it, by the way, and I think there's a pile that we could learn from, you know, your experience. You're up front, you're on Check News, you're posting on everything, you know, but we need to be deliberate and have a hearts and minds campaign. Al, you're spot on.
Just to expand a little bit on what Kurt said earlier, get in front of an ITV manager. Well, I can give you a way to do that. In a couple of weeks at the Western Innovation Forum, you can sign up your company and ask for a meeting with ITV managers. I'm doing that. I suggest if you're interested at all in getting into this game, that's a good start. It's not going to cost you anything except your time. It's all a video conference, and I can tell you that I'm going to have probably 30, 40, 15-minute coffee breaks with all these ITV people that are going to be available. So take care of that. Do it.
Got one more. Unless, no, John, and then an announcement, and then we're done.